I'm Claudine Wong, joining you from the San Francisco Bay Area. I've got a great panel with me today. I've got Casey Neer, who is with CollegeWise. She's the Chief Academic Officer. And then I've got a bunch of high school seniors who are navigating their way through this coronavirus crisis as they try to figure out what their fall looks like. I'm going to let you guys introduce yourself. I also have Jen Lasan, who is a parent who is kind enough to join us to give the parental perspective through all of this, but I'll let you guys introduce yourself. Tell me if you have already committed to a school or if you are still deciding. Alicia, we'll start with you.
Hi, I'm Alicia. I'm a senior at Irvine High School, and I'm planning on going to UC Davis in the fall.
And Owen?
I'm Owen Lasan. I'm a senior from Ardmore, Oklahoma, and I'm planning to go to Oklahoma State in the fall.
Chris?
Hi, I'm Chris Fakimi. I'm a senior at De La Salle High School in the East Bay, and I'm deciding between Berkeley and Notre Dame still.
And Natalie?
Hi, I'm Natalie Ionescu. I'm from the Bay Area, California. I go to Carondelet High School, and I've committed to Claremont Mckenna College.
Okay, perfect. So Casey, let's talk about in terms of, we've got 3 committed, 1 on the fence. We've got a deadline that's usually May 1st, although it's changed a lot to June 1st. And that's to give people more time to kind of figure it out. Figuring it out used to be going to the school and kind of wrapping your head around it. Now, what does figuring out look like in this pandemic?
Yeah, I think a lot of it depends on the personal situation with the family. If it's financial, it's buying yourself some literal time to figure out if you can get a better financial aid offer if your finances have changed. I think if it's an emotional choice, just deciding between 2 places that you either did or didn't have a chance to visit, it's doing stuff virtually. It's hopping on social media for the most part, engaging with current students. I think the hardest part right now is not being able to get kind of that behind the scenes view that admitted students days usually allow for you to have. So I think you're in the power seat if you're an admitted student. So I think asking the hard questions of, will I have access to this? Will I have the ability to do this? That's what I'm encouraging students to do in those online spaces. And if you need an extension, take it. But if you don't, and this is seems an obvious one, don't take the extension if you don't need it. Colleges really, really are trying to do their best in predicting their class. And if you know by May 1, make a commitment.
Make a commitment because, so Chris, you have interesting choices because you're talking about Cal, which is a short distance from where you live. That's in state and closer to home, and Notre Dame, which is, all the way in Indiana, in South Bend, Indiana. What is determining, your decision? And do you think you'd have an easier time deciding if we weren't in this pandemic, or would it be the same?
I think I would still have some difficulty, but I think it would definitely be easier. For me, what's determining my decision is like their outreach to me. I've got a lot of emails. They have basically like they just had like a Cal week, which was basically you do their online sessions and hubs and videos. And then Notre Dame also has these live Q&A sessions that they do talking about different programs they have and different things, as well as both schools have reached out and you can text them. They've had someone from their respective departs and you text them and ask some questions. So they've definitely done, I think, as good a job as they can, reaching out, helping you provide the information you need. But I think at the end of the day, like being there provides a certain level of experience, a certain level of ability to kind of see things for yourself that something like a website or just answering your questions cannot really provide. So I think it's definitely made things more difficult.
Yeah, and any concern, is your family saying don't leave the state because we're so unsure of things, or is that not factoring in?
Some of the members of my family are, but some of the other members of my family are not. It's divided household on that, but it definitely is a concern. I feel like one of the things we're concerned about is I feel like they just keep pushing back dates. Everything is like sort of uncertain, so everything just keeps pushing back and pushing back and pushing back. So will it be inevitably easier to go to Berkeley just because of the way dates, things are canceling, things are moved around? Will it just be too difficult? And I don't know. That's one of the things that we're just going to have to deal with.
Something that you weren't worried about before a pandemic, of whether it's just easier to go and easier. Show of hands in terms of how many of you guys have done a virtual tour of the school that you are thinking of attending or like to attend. Did you guys all visit campuses physically?
Yes.
Yeah.
Everyone. So the virtual tour wasn't as important, right? Because you had. Oh, and you were considering some out-of-state schools. Did any of this play into staying closer to home?
Um, not necessarily. By the time I made my decision, I kind of we had not really hit this problem yet. So I've been lucky enough to not have to make my decision based on the virus and how it has impacted travel and things like that.
So that makes it a lot easier to kind of just move forward because it wasn't pandemic influenced.
Right. Yeah.
What about you, Natalie? Did any of this change the way, when did you make your choice for Claremont McKenna?
So I applied early decision, so I committed back in December.
So this was the dream school already. And so so has Corona changed any of it, or has that been able to give you a nice smooth path? I don't want to say it's a smooth path, but smoother because you're confident about it.
It's definitely been a lot easier than some of my classmates and a lot of students across the US. However, I was really looking forward to our admitted student day during my spring break, but Claremont they actually did a really good job at kind of recuperating that loss. They created a series of information sessions almost every single day about different departments, about different programs they have. And so that's been very informative for me. And I'm very thankful to be able to attend a school where they have all these resources open for me.
Alicia, what about you for UC Davis? Have you already pushed the button, sent it in?
Yeah, I have.
Yes, I'm coming.
So, yeah, they did a great job as well. They had like a whole week of different activities where they talked about like housing and dining one day, and then like student life one day, just like academic life another day, which I thought was really, really helpful. And like talking with different experts in each of those areas. So yeah, it definitely made like my decision like a lot better because I felt like I knew the school better.
Mm-hmm. Jen, I'm wondering with you as a parent, if Owen said, I want to go to Florida, or I want to go to Michigan, or I'm not going to pick on a state, but another state far away, where maybe the numbers are different than they are in Oklahoma, or maybe the uncertainty is, would there be a part of you that said, hey, maybe you should rethink that? I mean, if Chris was your kid and was deciding between Cal and Notre Dame, where's your vote?
I think absolutely yes. And it really relies heavily on the fact that I really want him to be able to go to school this fall. And I think in the back of my mind, there's probably a better chance where we live now that would happen if he stayed local versus going to a different state where perhaps they may still have difficulty with the number of cases, and those students may be online in the fall versus students at Oklahoma State who have already said, we plan to have you back. So I think I would absolutely try and persuade him to stay closer, simply because maybe there's a better chance that he will actually have that college experience that he's been expecting to have, his whole life once he graduates.
It's lucky he made the decision that you didn't. But Chris, if she was your mom, she would tell you to go to Cal. So
Sorry, I would.
I'm going to share this screen, Casey, and let's weigh in on this. There have been many surveys, but this one was talking about the pandemic may cause their child to delay going to college. There have been a bunch of other ones. One by the Simpson Scarborough that said 1/5 of the people they surveyed said they would not attend college because of this pandemic. I wonder if these are I don't want to say they're not real numbers, but surveys are different. Are you seeing, this being a very big factor in terms of how people are responding to here's a couple of other numbers just as we go through it. 65% of parents say the pandemic has made them more cautious about the financial impact. So then if you have an out-of-state school as well, that changes it. 40% of parents would now prefer their child to attend a college or university closer to home. That's what Jen was saying as well. I mean, are you hearing that from a lot of parents too?
Yeah, I mean, I think this underscored something we always know to be true. I mean, alien came in and watched movies and TV shows about the American college experience. They know it's residential. It's something that's in close community. You go to football games, it's rah-rah. Things that are obviously, we're realizing, very hard to do in a world of shelter in place. So I think this is underscored for, I think, teenagers and their parents, how much we really hold on to that idea of the traditional in-person model of higher ed, so much so that we're willing to delay potentially going for a year so that we can have that. So I think that is frankly terrifying colleges and universities, because we're also realizing the precarious financial situation that most higher ed institutions were already in, and this potentially is going to push them forward. So colleges right now are making individual decisions about what their policies are with deferrals. Some colleges are saying we're going to take them to X date. Some colleges are saying they're on a case-by-case basis. But the reality is
international as well, but only international.
Right. And some have said, we're basically going to tell you there's no way international kids are going to come. So we're going to push you into 2021, and we're going to recruit off of our wait list for domestic students to fill the class. But basically they need to hit their enrollment goals, and they need to be able to collect that tuition, frankly, or else some colleges are going to start to close.
Yeah.
And not any of the colleges you four are going to.
They're like, wait, what?
But there are, thousands of American higher ed, institutions in this country, many of which are struggling financially. And if they can't bring in tuition this fall, which is half of the revenue they were expecting, they're going to struggle. And deferrals delay that payment.
Well, and let me ask you something. Owen, you said OSU has already said you're likely to be in class. I don't think the UCs have said anything like that. I think actually it's leaning the other way towards online if we had to tip a scale. Claremont, Mckenna, have they said anything about online in the fall?
They mentioned bringing a group of students to campus. I'm thinking maybe just my freshman class.
Oh.
They were talking about having classes outside maybe, because we're classes of 20 to 25 people, so it's very small numbers.
So if they said, okay, and I'm going to pick on you, Chris, just because you haven't committed yet. If Cal said, we're online at least through January, and Notre Dame said, nope, we're going to have you come, would that influence your decision?
I think,
I'm not saying that, and I don't think you're going to get that answer, right, Casey? So, but I'm just wondering if it would influence.
I think that if I were any other major, yes, but I'm a computer science major. I'm quite comfortable with doing my kind of work online, writing code, talking with people online. It's just kind of the nature of the major. So I don't think it would be a big factor, but I think definitely if I'm an English major or a history major, something like that, I think there's a lot more is lost by going online. But I think for computer science, I don't think it'll be that big of a difference maker.
Experience. Alicia, what was your second choice after Davis?
So I was kind of deciding between this, like essentially like all the UCs in general. So
however
so like
it was going to affect you.
Yeah, exactly. So it didn't really make a difference because it would be like between all of them. But I do think that if a school were to say that they were doing it online, I would respect that as much as like I would hate to be at home. I think that's really important for schools to like do that, just because like especially at UCs where there's thousands, like tens of thousands of students. I think like being online is like the best decision for that.
Yeah. Owen, what about you? If OSU said something differently, I don't know where your second choice was. Would you switch? Would that have factored into your decision? Because there are some people still making that decision now.
I think I definitely would have taken it into consideration. But when you find a school that you you really want to go to, you definitely have to think of the future too. I mean, you don't want to go to a school that maybe you didn't like as much as your first option. And do you want to go there and have that affect the rest of your college career? Or maybe do you just want to have a tough first year, but still be at the school that you wanted to be at in the first place?
Yeah, Natalie, what about you? What was your second?
Yeah, going off of what Owen said, an education is an education. I mean, if you're really drawn to a school, go to that school regardless of whether or not it's going to be online or in person, because we're all hoping that things will get better, and it eventually will get better. So you will still have time on that campus, just maybe not the first year.
So Casey, I want to ask you too, you mentioned waitlist. So let's say Chris, and again, we're picking on him because he hasn't decided yet, but let's say Notre Dame and I don't know this was to be true. Notre Dame was his first choice, but his family says you can't You can't go that far. You've got to go to Cal, which is also obviously a fantastic institution. But that is changing wait lists for people, because Christopher's spot, where it would have been open to someone else coming in, now gets filled, even though he probably would have chosen something else if all things were equal. I think we'll see a big impact, especially at state schools and the local schools.
Yeah. I mean, I think you guys probably, having gone to some colleges, are aware of the fact that there aren't any more just deans of admission. They're called VPs of enrollment management. This is a process to manage, and it's a lot of actually predictive modeling and economic modeling about what consumers will choose. And if anyone's awake right now, they recognize that predictive models are out the window, right? No one could have predicted A, what was going to happen, and B, what consumers are going to do in a crisis. We're starting to see maybe that people are potentially staying closer to home, that in-state schools are going to balloon in terms of their enrollment, and that private further afield schools are going to lower, but we're not going to really know the stats until after May 1st, that first deposit deadline. And then frankly, through the summer, as colleges come out with more direct statements about what they're going to be doing in the fall.
I have a question too, and Jen, we'll start with you as a parent. If it's online, if OSU says, okay, we wanted to have them come in, but now we're going to go online, are you comfortable paying the same tuition that you would have paid for in-person classes? Because all the colleges are also handling different. Some of them gave money back in spring, but I think a lot of them are setting up saying, and Casey, you can correct me if I'm wrong, saying, yeah, no, we're not going to be discounting, because they're already facing this huge financial crisis. But how do you feel about paying for college online now that you've seen what high school looks like online versus in person?
It's a great question. I think, we wouldn't be impacted quite as much because we are in state. But you do consider, even that versus the community college, where there could be classes there that would be a lot cheaper. And perhaps you defer and go a semester later and take those classes closer to home that would still be online. And I've seen a lot, and I'm interested to hear, Casey, what your opinion is on this, but a lot of the parent pages that you see on Facebook for the different universities, and I'm attached to OU and OSU both because that's where my kids will be. But I've seen a lot of out-of-state parents stating that their kid will not be coming back, even if their child's a junior or, going into their sophomore year. They will not be coming back in the fall if it's online, because they're not willing to pay that out-of-state tuition, and that they'll find something local to, defer the cost that they would pay for their child to be at home taking those classes online.
I mean, it seems reasonable. Casey, what do you tell a parent who says, should I do that?
Yeah.
I mean,
I
it's
think
expensive to go,
I know.
especially out of state tuition. I mean, you're talking big dollars.
Yeah. Well, and I think talk about, what this crisis has exposed. I think we in this, profession have long seen the ballooning cost of tuition and cost of attendance for colleges. And I think it isn't until you take away the in-person experience that you start to really assess the line item, expenses and go, what are they charging for for the rock climbing wall that I liked and the frozen yogurt machine and all these things I no longer have access to. And so I think, colleges are going to have to also unbundle, when we talk about tuition, we're actually usually talking about cost of attendance, which is room and board and tuition. Obviously colleges are going to have a hard time charging you for room and board if you're living at home in your parents', house. But I think how they discount tuition remains to be seen. To speak to Chris, one of your choices, Cal came out and said, we're not going to discount tuition for the fall. They've said, we're going to stick to it no matter the medium by which you're taught. We're going to charge the same. And the reality is a lot of colleges had to make decisions about tuition years ago when they were setting budgets. So part of this is also what they have the capacity to change right now.
Yeah. So if, I've been asking a lot of the questions, but I want to see if you guys have any other, if you could get one question answered in this world where we don't have enough answers, what would it be? What would be the one thing that would make you feel better about fall? And going to college? Alicia, let me start with you. It could be a question that we don't have an answer to, or it could be a question for Casey. And maybe she's got, maybe hold her to the fire.
Conjure it, yeah.
And so you can conjure up her glass ball and tell us the answers that we're looking for.
I think my main question would be about just online during the fall, and if it were to be online, if it would have the same like educational experience? Would I get the same like value for my education if it was online? I think that's something that is harder to answer just because there's not much to compare it to, and if that's the only option, then that's the only option. But yeah, like would it like is it the same thing? Like am I getting the right education online?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the only answer I would give to that is it all comes back to why you're going to college, which sounds like an obvious and dumb question to ask, but I think everybody has a different reason. You know, for some people, and Chris, I'm curious your take on this, it's to get ahead in a certain career path and profession. And therefore him needing to learn online as a CS major may not make a big difference to his end goal, right? Versus me, I actually went to one of the Claremont consortium schools and I wanted to sit under trees and read great literature and, you know, and argue about philosophical points. And so to me, online would be a death knell to the idea of what I wanted in education. So I think part of it comes down to what you wanted out of the experience. So if you wanted that latter, yeah, this is going to be different. The value is going to be different. But I think, when you mentioned this, I think the long view is really important here. I think we're all hopeful that this is really truly a semester adjustment, not a 4-year adjustment, and knowing that it's going to shake out. And frankly, I mean, talk about a bonding moment for the class of 2020. I think you guys are going to have the most awesome reunions down the line of remember when we were all struggling with this, and that's going to be pretty interesting.
They'll have prom in 2021. Yeah, Chris, I know you've got class in 4 minutes, so I'm going to let you ask the next question, and just you have one burning question. Do you have until May 1st, or do you have until did Notre Dame extend it? I think Berkeley did not, but
I'm going to decide by May 1st.
okay.
My biggest concern actually is not necessarily with the fall, although have things, but I'm most concerned with the summer because I like to do academic programs over the summer. I always have, and both the schools that I'm looking at do have various programs where you go to them for a few weeks at a time, and you know you learn based on the major. So it would be computer science, so you go into a lab or you meet with people beforehand. And so my biggest concern is that they're not going to try to reschedule those things. And that would really be a bummer for me because I was really hoping to be able to get like sort of a jump start on the fall semester and kind of get acclimated, you know, to the culture and the class and the campus kind of a little bit early. I just kind of like that idea to that sort of thing. So my question to Casey would be like, have you heard anything about what they're going to do with those sort of programs? Because I haven't heard very much about them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it speaks to, Natalie, you mentioned that CMC, Claremont, and I think some schools there's probably about 27 contingency plans, whether or not your colleges have told you this or not, that everybody is going through. And I think one of them is recognizing that if there's any sacred college in-person experience, it's the first year experience. And how do we make sure that for those students, we can maintain normalcy as much as we can. And so there is that kind of contingency plan of what if we brought just our first year students, dispersed them amongst housing so that they're socially distant in housing, made sure we only run smaller classes where you're 6 feet apart. I mean, you can go down the list of if you're then only working with, but it's different because CMC, that's about 300 students, OSU, that's in the thousands. So I think it depends on where you're going if they're able to do that. The summer ones, I would say, though, are the first probably on the chopping block because they're earlier in the calendar. And I think they're going to probably try and push those into fall if they can. But they're really going to focus on things that bond students together because I agree, those are so important to acclimate to the experience.
Yeah. Sorry, Chris, that doesn't sound good for your summer programs.
Doom and gloom today.
And Natalie, what would be the question that you had?
As Casey mentioned, the first year of college is very important. It's a time for us to become independent, for us to really learn how to handle handle our life by ourselves. And I think one of those things come with the people around you, your friends, your classmates. So I guess my question would be, how big of a disconnect would there be between my future classmates and when we return back to campus? Will there be programs or, you know, sessions where we can meet other people, where we can bond with people, and just generally speaking about the people we'll be around?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's emotionally important for colleges because they know that's central to the American college experience is you know, it's the reason why you didn't sign up to go to online school. You signed up to have the in-person experience. It's also something they're measured by, right? They're measured by retention, which is the year over year retaining students, right? How many of you actually stick around to graduation? So it's why you have student affairs centers and entire people on campus who are built to either A, make sure you have fun, and B, make sure you have a sense of belonging, right? And so to me, those are only going to become more heightened in an era of completely not feeling a sense of belonging because you're taking potentially school through Zoom. So I would imagine that they're going to build in a lot of things for that second year of let's try and recoup the things that were lost, right? Maybe let's have a 2.0 orientation for both 2020 and 21 students. I think they're going to get creative because they know how essential it is for you to feel attached to their school, selfishly and unselfishly.
Yeah. And I think, you know, I think probably we'll have to be more open that that's not just a freshman year thing. That's a freshman and sophomore year thing.
Yeah.
Jumping in. Jen and Owen, I'll end with you. Chris, I should tell you, if you have to go to class, you can abandon us and it's okay. We won't be offended. We definitely appreciate your time, but I don't want to make you late for class. You've got AP tests, you got things going.
Yes, I do.
I
Thank you.
appreciate
Good luck, Chris.
It's been great.
Thanks, Chris. I
Bye.
appreciate your
Good
time.
luck.
Yeah, I was looking at the clock because I knew that he had class to go to. All right, Jen and Owen, let me ask you guys if you had one more question or a question that you knew you could get an answer to, what would it be?
Obviously, just when would this end? But I mean, realistically, I think everyone else answered all the questions that I really had about college from a student perspective, though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Jen, what
I
about
feel
you?
the same. I feel like all the questions we have are questions that we don't have answers for, and that's why they're so frustrating. So it is, you know, a test of patience just to wait and see and, you know, try and present the best attitude you have, you know, you can put forth to ride the wave and feel blessed that, you know, we are where we are and that in the grand scheme of things, you know, things will get better and
they're going to get better. Yes.
I know.
Right.
There's the other side to the doom and right. And I think, are you guys going through the normal processes? Like it looks like the deadlines are still the same for housing, for signing things up, or it looks like everyone's going full steam ahead as if it'll be full steam ahead, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you guys, I have taken up so much of your time, but I definitely appreciate it. Casey and Alicia and Owen and Jen and Natalie, thanks so much for the chat. And we're in this together. It changes day by day, hour by hour. So hopefully it changes for the better. We'll hope for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck, guys.
Thank
you.